What if I told you the way you sit, blink, or breathe is saying more about your desire than your words ever could? And worse, that people can feel when you're faking it. This isn't about lines or looks. This is about the silent truth your body's been leaking all along. Let's decode it before it keeps betraying you. There's a moment that exists before hello, a silent, invisible pulse of energy that passes between two people. You've felt it. You walk into a party, a bar, a bookstore, and without a single word, your attention is pulled. Not by the loudest voice, not by the best dressed, but by something deeper, something instinctual. Your eyes lock, your breath shifts, and for a split second, time fractures. And you both know something just started. That moment is where attraction begins, not in the clever pickup line, not in the scripted banter, but in that primal flicker that happens before your mouth opens. It's not something we think about. It's something we feel, and it happens fast. How fast? A study from Princeton University found that we form first impressions in as little as 1/10 of a second just from looking at someone's face. That's before you've even said hi. That impression includes perceived confidence, status, safety, and even sexual viability. You're being judged not for your words, but for how you carry yourself. It's biological, it's ancient. Humans evolved in tribal conditions where survival depended on snap judgments. Is this person a threat? A potential ally? A mate? Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of long conversations. They had to read each other instantly and accurately. The modern dating world might look more polished, but the code still runs on those same instincts. I remember watching it play out on a rooftop in Los Angeles. It was one of those exclusive, invite-only parties where everyone seemed to know everyone, or wanted to. I was standing near the bar, nursing a drink, when a guy walked in, average height, plain clothes, no jewelry. No designer labels, but within minutes, 3 women turned to face his direction. They didn't speak. They just shifted. Bodies opened, eyes followed. It was involuntary. He hadn't said a word. He didn't smile. Didn't try to make an entrance. But the way he walked, slow, grounded, eyes relaxed but scanning, sent a clear signal. He wasn't trying to get attention. He expected it. There's a physics to presence. People feel your energy before they hear your words. If your inner world is chaotic, insecure, or needy, it leaks out through your body. But if you're centered, intentional, and in control of your space, that speaks louder than language. This is why confidence is so seductive, but not the loud, performative kind. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't seek approval. It doesn't chase. It simply is, and that's what people are drawn to. The energy of someone who doesn't need anything from the room, but still commands it. I once coached a client, a highly successful tech founder. On paper, he had it all: wealth, status, intelligence. But every time he approached women, they withdrew, not because of what he said, but how he entered. His body was stiff, his eyes darted. He leaned in too close, too fast. His words were charming, but his energy screamed, "Please like me." And they could feel it. Instantly, we worked on silencing the words and rebuilding the presence. Slower breath, less movement. Stillness, not trying to perform, just being in the moment. Within 2 weeks, women were approaching him, not because of new lines, but because his presence became unignorable. He wasn't trying to impress anymore. He was listening with his body. That's the art of nonverbal seduction. It's not about what you say. It's about what you communicate before you speak. Let's talk about eyes. There's a difference between looking and seeing. Anyone can look, but to see someone, really see them, creates a charge, a connection. When you hold eye contact without flinching, without over-smiling, without trying to earn their attention, it creates tension. That tension is the breeding ground for attraction. It says, "I see you. I'm not afraid of what I see. And I'm not desperate to be seen back." This is what terrifies people and excites them. Nonverbal seduction is dangerous because it strips away the masks. Words are safe. They give us room to maneuver, deflect, and hide behind jokes or stories, but in silence. There's nowhere to hide, just breathe, posture, gaze, and intention. That's why it's powerful, that's why it works. I remember a woman I met in Paris, a dancer. We barely spoke the first night, language barrier mostly. But the connection was there. Every time we crossed paths in that crowded jazz bar, we would just stop. No talking, just stand there, watching, smiling, turning away, coming back. The people around us vanished. Time slowed. When we finally kissed hours later, it wasn't after a flirty backhand. Fourth, it was because the tension had built too high to ignore. We'd been communicating all night, just not with words. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Words can fake attraction. Body language cannot. You can memorize lines, learn routines, mimic charm, but your posture, your eye contact, your tension levels, they all betray the truth. Women, especially, are wired to read these signals. Studies show women are biologically more attuned to emotional subtext and nonverbal cues. It's part of evolutionary defense mechanisms. They don't just hear you, they read you. So what are you saying without speaking? If your shoulders are hunched, if you walk quickly and nervously, if you avoid eye contact or touch your face compulsively, you're broadcasting anxiety. No matter what your words are doing, but if you move with purpose, stand still without fidgeting, hold eye contact without demanding approval, you're radiating groundedness. And groundedness is attractive because it signals strength, safety, and control. That's the paradox. Nonverbal seduction isn't about being flashy. It's about being still. It's about mastering the one space most people never even think about, the space between the words. And once you get that right, once you tune your energy, breath, and gaze to the frequency of authenticity, you don't have to chase connection anymore. You draw it, not through force, not through speech, but through presence, and in a world addicted to noise, silence becomes the loudest aphrodisiac. Long before language, before poetry, before even the first lie ever spoken, there was movement. There was the body. And that's where seduction was born. You see, our nervous system evolved in a brutal environment. One where words didn't exist. One where the difference between survival and death often came down to how well you could read another human without speaking. Is this person safe? Are they dominant? Do they have value to offer or danger? This wasn't communicated through speech. It was posture, proximity, the tilt of the head, the slowness of breath, the dilation of pupils. That's the original code. Prehistoric, hardwired, still running in the background of every interaction you have today, especially when it comes to attraction. In fact, researchers estimate that over 60% of communication is nonverbal, and in some contexts of emotional intensity, like flirtation or confrontation, it can be as high as 93%. That means most of what we say isn't with our mouths, it's with our bodies. Here's where it gets wild. Our subconscious picks up on these signals before we're even aware of them. You don't decide to find someone sexy, your body does. Your eyes widen, your skin warms, your breath changes. And only afterward does your brain try to justify it with words like she's cute, or he's confident. This is why you can walk into a room and feel drawn to someone without knowing why. It's not logic, it's biology. Their body is sending signals, and yours is receiving them, whether you like it or not. I once watched this happen in Tokyo, at a tiny underground club where the DJ booth was wedged between neon graffiti and cigarette smoke. I was sitting with a translator friend when a woman walked in, tall, serene, and almost motionless. She wasn't the most beautiful woman in the room by conventional standards, but every man turned to look. And more interestingly, every woman did too. They were trying to decode what was going on. She wasn't talking. She wasn't smiling, but she moved like she knew something no one else did, a kind of floating stillness. She didn't check her phone, didn't adjust her dress. She simply stood by the bar with a presence so sharp it sliced through the music. Within minutes, men tried to initiate conversation, but she didn't chase it. She let them orbit, and then choose. Why? Because her body language was sending prehistoric signals. I am calm, I am selective, I am not threatened, I have options. Those are power cues. Ancient ones, let's break it down. Posture is your baseline. When you stand tall, not puffed up but grounded, you signal internal authority. In contrast, slouched shoulders or close, doff stances signal insecurity, which the primal brain reads as weakness or low value. In the wild, animals who are sick or submissive lower their bodies. They make themselves smaller, it's protection. So when you walk into a room with rounded shoulders, head down, and fidgety limbs, you're broadcasting a signal you don't mean to. I'm not a threat. I'm not important. I don't belong. Now contrast that with the way a lion walks. Slow, steady, unrushed. Doesn't need to prove anything. That kind of movement translates, even in modern settings. The brain still sees it and thinks alpha. Safe, reproduces, follows no one. Your gaze is another weapon. Direct eye contact, when done without neediness or aggression, creates instant tension. Not because of what's being said, but because it's an evolutionary test. Only those with emotional control can maintain strong eye contact under pressure. In the animal kingdom, eye contact is a dominance play. But among humans it's more nuanced. Too soft, and you look submissive. Too intense, and you look threatening. The sweet spot, present, steady, with a flicker of curiosity. That kind of gaze is magnetic. It doesn't demand anything, it just sees, and when someone feels truly seen, not looked at, but seen, the effect is profound. I remember a client in Milan who always struggled to build attraction. He was tall, successful, charming, but couldn't spark interest. Why? His eyes would dart the second a woman looked back. He'd glance, then immediately look away. He didn't even realize he was doing it. But to the women around him, the message was loud. I'm nervous. I don't think I'm worthy of holding this moment. We spent hours practicing one simple thing, looking then pausing, not staring, just being. By the end of the weekend, something shifted. He wasn't just making better eye contact. He was embodying it. And the women around him could feel it. Again, no new lines, just a new signal. Movement is the final pillar. Seductive movement isn't big. It's not exaggerated. It's controlled, subtle, often minimal. Think of someone who enters a room slowly, takes a beat before speaking, gestures only when necessary. They don't waste energy, they don't fidget. That's what makes them fascinating. Fast movement, by contrast, signals anxiety. If someone talks fast, moves fast, blinks excessively, or shifts from foot to foot, your brain flags it. This person is not in control. Something's off, and whether it's dating, sales, or negotiation, nobody trusts what they don't understand. Here's the truth. The body doesn't lie. It can't. People can fake a smile, but they can't fake how their shoulders sit when they walk into a room. They can rehearse lines, but they can't fake pupil dilation or micro-expressions or breath tempo. That's the code, and it's running underneath everything you say. The best seducers don't focus on words first. They master the body. They understand that posture is perception. Gaze is intention. Movement is emotion in motion. That's why when you see someone truly seductive, you feel it before they even open their mouth. There's something about the way they exist in space. Something prehistoric, something that speaks straight to the reptilian brain, the part of us that doesn't know how to lie to itself. Because the truth is, we are still animals, dressed in suits, scrolling through apps, pretending to be rational. But underneath it all, we're scanning each other for the same ancient cues our ancestors once did around firelight. And when you learn to speak that language, you don't just enter the room, you change the room. There's something you've seen 100 times, but maybe never understood. Two people walk into a room. One is loud, dressed sharp, head high, throwing out compliments like poker chips. The other is quiet, barely says a word, moves slowly, looks around once, and yet the room seems to lean toward him. He doesn't chase. People come to him. That's the silent magnet of confidence. It's not in volume, not in jokes, not in boasting about where you've been or what you drive. Real confidence, the kind that pulls attention without force, lives in the subtle things. In how you move, how you breathe, and what you don't flinch at. People often mistake confidence for extroversion. They think confidence is about talking first, dominating conversations, or walking with chest puffed out. But real confidence doesn't announce itself. It doesn't have to, it radiates. It's the calm beneath chaos. The eye of the storm. There was a moment once. years ago, in New York, a packed rooftop in summer. You know the type, people dressed to be noticed, drinks in hand, loud laughter that's just a little too rehearsed. But I remember a man leaning against the railing, alone, not scrolling his phone, not fidgeting, just there. Watching, relaxed, he didn't smile much, didn't bounce around from group to group. But as the night went on, more and more people approached him. They weren't drawn by his looks or status, it was something else, a stillness, a groundedness, like he didn't need to escape the moment because he was already enough. That's what confidence feels like to others. It gives off this invisible permission, you can relax now. I've got this. I know who I am. In contrast, insecurity is loud. It tries too hard. It fills silences too quickly. It flinches when eye contact lingers. It apologizes for its existence without using words. The human brain is a pattern detector. We're wired to notice micro signals, hesitations, breath tempo, tension in the jaw, subtle movements in the eyes. When someone is incongruent when their words say, "I'm fine," but their body screams discomfort, we don't trust them, even if we don't consciously know why. This is why the most magnetic people are the ones who can sit in silence and still hold your attention. It's not what they say, it's what they don't feel the need to say. That absence of need is rare and irresistible. I once worked with a client in Berlin, a hedge fund guy who had mastered numbers but not people. He wanted to be more confident with women, but his body betrayed him every time. He would rehearse stories, plan compliments, and still come across nervous. Why? Because he wasn't actually confident. He was just performing a version of it. So we stripped it back, took away the lines, removed the tricks, made him sit across from people and just breathe. Slowly, deeply, without smiling nervously, without trying to entertain. At first, it was torture for him. Silence felt like rejection, but by the third day, something shifted. His jaw loosened, his posture opened. He stopped blinking so much, and the result, women began responding to him in ways he'd never experienced. Not because he'd changed his words, but because he'd finally dropped the mask. Here's the truth no one tells you. Confidence is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to stay present with it, to not flinch. You feel nervous on a date, breathe slower. Don't rush your words. Don't try to kill the tension. Sit in it, own it. You're uncertain about a decision. Look people in the eye and say, "I'm thinking." That's confident. Needing to have all the answers instantly. That's not confidence. That's ego scrambling to protect itself. People who are truly confident don't need to be right all the time. They don't need everyone to like them. They don't chase validation, and because of that, validation chases them. This applies not just in dating, but in business, leadership, and life. Watch how a confident person walks into a room. They don't scan for approval. They scan for alignment. They're not thinking, "Will they like me?" They're thinking, "Do they fit my world?" And that changes everything. There was a woman in Barcelona, a dancer, effortlessly magnetic. Not because of her looks, though she was beautiful, but because she moved like the room belonged to her. She didn't compete with the noise. She walked through it. Not fast, not slow, just with intention. And when she spoke, she didn't speak to impress. She let pauses breathe. She let her eyes land, and when she smiled, it felt earned. That's another hallmark of real confidence, comfort with space. People who aren't confident rush to fill every moment, every silence, every pause, but confidence trusts the moment. It knows silence is seductive. It knows slowness can be felt. It knows stillness can be stronger than words. In fact, there's neuroscience behind this. Studies have shown that when someone slows down their speech and gestures, they are perceived as more powerful. Not because of what they are saying, but because they signal control. And control, to the subconscious mind, reads as competence. Stability, status. This is evolutionary. In ancient times, only those at the top of the hierarchy could afford to be still. Movement meant danger, stillness meant safety. So when someone is calm, centered, and unhurried, the primal brain interprets that as strength. That's the kind of person others want to follow or mate with. But here's the paradox. You can't fake it. You can't pretend to be calm while internally screaming. People feel that the body always tells the truth. So real confidence begins within, not with the words you rehearse, but with the permission you give yourself to be exactly where you are. Nervous, own it. Uncertain, say less. Confused, don't mask it, stay with it. Because the most powerful message you can send to anyone in any room is this: I am comfortable in my own skin. I don't need you to fix me, complete me, or validate me. I am whole. When that message is communicated, not through language, but through breath, gaze, and presence, something incredible happens. The world starts to lean in, not because you demanded it, but because you no longer needed it. That's the moment you stop chasing attention and start attracting it. They say the eyes are the window to the soul. That's poetic. But in the real world, they're much more than that. They're a weapon, a loaded one. You don't need to speak to seduce someone. You don't need to touch them. You don't even need to stand close. If you know how to use your eyes properly, the rest almost doesn't matter. Eye contact isn't just a form of communication, it's a test, a trigger, a direct line into someone's nervous system. It can spark desire, disarm defenses, flip the balance of power, or short-circuit the moment completely. But only when done right. Most people use their eyes to look. Confident people use them to see. There's a difference. Looking is passive, it's scanning, it's checking someone out from across the room, hoping they don't notice you noticing them. Seeing is active, seeing is presence. Seeing is when your eyes land on someone and don't flinch. Not because you're trying to intimidate. Not because you're needy, but because you're there, fully, quietly, unapologetically. And when you see someone like that, really see them, something shifts in their body. They might smile or freeze, or look away, confused but curious. But underneath it all, their brain has already processed the message. This person is dangerous. In a good way. In fact, neuroscience backs this up. Prolonged eye contact activates the amygdala, the part of the brain associated with emotion, fear, arousal, and social processing. It's a biological alert system. Sustained eye contact tells the brain something important is happening. Pay attention. Now take that same science and apply it to attraction, because what most people don't realize is that sexual energy starts in the eyes, not the mouth, not the body. The first spark, the first test, the first moment of "could there be something here?" is almost always exchanged in a look. Brief or bold, intentional or accidental, the eyes start it all. In Paris once, I watched a woman lock eyes with a man from 20 feet away. She didn't smile, she didn't wave, just a look, direct and sustained for 3 seconds longer than expected. Then she turned her back and walked into the crowd. He was stunned, actually stunned, like someone had just whispered a secret into his bloodstream. He spent the next hour looking for her, scanning every corner of the room, and when they finally crossed paths again, there was no awkward small talk. There was tension, history, like something had already begun without a single word exchanged. That's the power of the eyes when used with precision. But here's the thing, too much eye contact, or the wrong kind, can kill attraction just as fast. Neediness leaks through the eyes. So does desperation, so does fear. When someone stares hoping for validation, the effect is repelling, not alluring. Think of it like this: the eyes should invite, not chase. There's a difference between holding eye contact and gripping it. The key to using your eyes as a weapon is calibration. It's not about intensity. It's about presence without pressure. You hold the gaze just long enough to suggest, "I see you, I'm not in a rush. I'm not afraid of you." Then you break it before it gets too heavy. And if you're bold, you do it again. That rhythm, see, pause, break, return, creates a seductive kind of tension. It plants a question in the other person's mind. Why are they looking at me like that? What do they know? What are they not saying? That's where curiosity starts. Curiosity is the ignition switch of seduction. In Prague, I coached a quiet, analytical guy, let's call him Eric. He hated small talk, hated the bar scene, but he wanted to learn attraction without changing who he was. So we started with one rule: no talking for the first 5 minutes. just eye contact. At first, he panicked. He thought he'd look creepy, but he practiced softening his gaze, not smiling, not staring, just relaxing his face and holding people's eyes a second longer than felt comfortable. By the third night, something changed. Women began walking up to him. One even said, "There's something about the way you look at people. It's intense." What she didn't realize is that it wasn't intensity he was showing. It was presence. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't watching the room. He was in the moment, and the eyes were the delivery system. But this is where it gets dangerous, because when you really understand how to use your eyes, you can influence people without saying a word. That's a responsibility, because people trust what they feel, and the right look at the wrong time or in the wrong context can confuse, provoke, or mislead. So how do you know if your eye contact is working? Simple. Watch what their body does next. If they lean in, smile, blink slowly, or touch their face, they've felt it. You've penetrated the mask. If they freeze, fidget, or immediately look away and avoid returning, they felt it too, but it triggered discomfort. Either way, your eyes spoke, and they said something more honest than your mouth ever could. Now here's something most people overlook. Seductive eye contact doesn't happen only across the room. It happens in conversation too. In fact, it's more powerful when you're close, because up close every micro movement matters. Your pupils dilate, your eyelids soften, the distance between gaze and touch disappears. And in that space, just inches away, the eyes become less about dominance and more about connection. You don't just look into them, you pull them in, you create a loop, they look at you, feel something, react, and that reaction changes how you look back. That feedback loop is where chemistry lives. Think about your most electric connection, a lover, a partner, a stranger you never forgot. There was a moment, wasn't there, a glance held too long, a gaze so full of meaning it didn't need translation. That wasn't magic. That was biology, skill, stillness, and the understanding that attraction doesn't start in your lips or your hands. It starts in your eyes, because while everyone else is trying to impress with what they say, you, the one who knows how to look, can seduce with what you don't say. You don't chase, you see, you don't search, you hold, and you don't blink first, because when the eyes are your weapon, every glance becomes a choice and every silence becomes a spark. There's a dance happening long before lips meet, before bed sheets twist, before words like "I want you" are ever spoken. It starts in space, in distance, in how two bodies orbit each other, test gravity, and push the limits of closeness without saying a word. Most people don't understand this. They think intimacy begins with compliments, conversation, or clever lines. But they're skipping ahead, missing the language that comes before language, the silent choreography of proximity and touch. This is where seduction truly begins, and it doesn't shout. It whispers. There's a reason why the first time someone moves slightly closer to you, your skin becomes aware. Your heart skips a beat, even if they haven't touched you yet. It's primal, because before there were words, there was space. And in that space, everything meant something. Thousands of years ago, if someone entered your personal zone, it wasn't casual. It was survival. It was a threat or a signal of mating. Our brains haven't evolved much since then. We still read closeness as meaning. We still feel touch as truth. That's why mastering this invisible dance matters more than anything you say. You don't walk up to someone and grab their hand. You don't sit down beside them and invade their space like a wrecking ball. That's not seductive, that's invasive. Seduction is about micro adjustments. It's about reading tension, testing boundaries, creating the kind of slow, magnetic gravity that pulls someone toward you, not because you push, but because you invite. I remember once in Amsterdam watching a woman enter a bar. She didn't talk much. She didn't flirt loudly. She simply moved with awareness. She didn't sit next to someone right away. She hovered a few feet away, just within their peripheral awareness. She lingered, let them feel her presence before ever speaking. When she finally sat down beside a man, she clearly had her eye on. She didn't lean in. She didn't touch. She simply angled her body slightly, enough to suggest openness. And then, about 10 minutes into the conversation, her fingers casually grazed his arm while laughing at something he said. Less than a second, and that was it. His body reacted instantly, shoulders loosened, posture shifted. Pupils dilated, one barely noticeable brush of the skin and something inside him leaned forward. That's how powerful touch can be when it's timed right. The secret is pacing. The slower the escalation, the more electricity it builds, because anticipation, when done right, is more powerful than the act itself. But you don't start with touch, you start with distance. There's a subtle sweet spot between too far and too close. It's called the intimate edge, close enough that your presence is felt, but far enough that there's room to crave more. This is where seduction thrives. You test this edge with movement. Lean in slightly when they're speaking. See if they lean back or stay with you. Reach for a glass near their side. Do they tense up or relax? Mirror their body angle. Do they unconsciously match yours or close off? These are signals, green lights. Cautions, invitations, and once you raid those signals, really raid them, you can start to move closer. Not all at once, inch by inch, moment by moment, until the space between your bodies becomes a question that only touch can answer. But here's where most people go wrong. They touch too soon, too obviously. They mistake proximity for permission. They move in for the hand, the leg, the back before the energy is right, before the moment has built the tension to hold it. You want to make your first touch forgettable in action, but unforgettable in feeling. Let me explain. The most seductive touch is the one that feels accidental, but isn't. Your knee brushes theirs under the table. You guide them gently through a doorway with a hand at the lower back. Your fingers barely graze theirs as you hand something over. It's subtle, plausibly deniable, but your nervous systems both feel it. And once that door is open, once that first layer of contact is normalized, the next one becomes easier. Then comes the linger, the accidental hand that doesn't quite move away, the fingers that stay a second longer, the palm that rests instead of taps. Touch is like music. It needs rhythm, contrast, and silence between the notes. In Sydney, I worked with a client, let's call her Lucia, who struggled to connect physically. She was warm, magnetic, but always kept too much space between her and the people she was attracted to. She thought it was respectful, but often it created confusion. The people she wanted to attract couldn't feel her intentions. So we practiced something called progressive proximity. She would start every interaction further away than felt natural. Then every few minutes she'd move a few inches closer. No sudden shifts, no awkward moves, just a slow, natural encroachment of space until she was inside their magnetic field. Once she mastered this, something wild happened. She didn't have to be touchy. People started touching her. They leaned in, brushed against her, reached out more. Why? Because she had created a vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum. When you slowly, confidently close the distance and hold your energy steady, people want to fill the rest. That's the other secret. Stillness invites movement. When you're calm, grounded, and relaxed in your body, others start moving toward you. And when they initiate the first touch, even lightly, your body becomes the answer to a question they didn't even know they were asking. But don't confuse stillness with hesitation. Hesitation is when you're scared to touch. Stillness is when you know you could, but choose to wait. That restraint is powerful, because in the absence of pressure, every touch gains weight. When a touch finally comes after minutes, maybe hours of rising tension, it's electric. Not because of what it is, but because of everything it took to get there. It's like fire. If you light a match in a room already filled with gas, it doesn't just glow, it explodes. So build the gas, through glances, through distance, through slow, confident closeness. Then, and only then, strike the match. Touch their hand, brush their shoulder. Rest your fingers for half a second longer than you need to. And let the silence after that touch speak louder than any compliment ever could. There's a dangerous misconception that the more you talk, the more someone will like you. That connection equals confession. That vulnerability, poured out in detail and speed, will seduce someone into intimacy. Wrong. In seduction, mystery beats words every time. It's not about what you say. It's about what you don't. What's held back whispers louder than what's shared too easily. Because seduction isn't about explanation, it's about exploration. And nothing kills curiosity faster than too much clarity, too soon. Look at any great film, any unforgettable character, any real-life person who pulled you in instantly. The ones who left you thinking about them hours later weren't the ones who told you everything. They were the ones who made you wonder. What's their story? Why did they say it like that? What are they not telling me? That's the hook. Now, understand something. Mystery isn't about being secretive. It's not cold, it's not distant, it's not lying. It's not pretending to be someone you're not. That's manipulation, not seduction. Real mystery is restraint. It's strategic vulnerability. It's knowing how much to give and how much to hold back. Let me tell you about someone who embodied this perfectly. A guy I met in Rio de Janeiro. His name was Leo. He was magnetic, charming, but incredibly private. In a sea of guys bragging about their money, their jobs, their exploits, Leo barely said anything about himself. He'd say just enough to keep a conversation alive, a story with the middle cut out, a sentence that sounded like a riddle. Women were drawn to him, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't. One night at a rooftop party, a woman asked him directly, "What do you do?" He smiled. "Depends on the season." That was it. No title, no status, no attempt to impress. Just a cryptic, playful answer that left her intrigued. She leaned in closer, asked another question. He answered just enough, then changed the subject to her. He flipped the spotlight. That night, she followed him everywhere. Because here's the secret. When you give people a story with missing pieces, they fill in the gaps themselves, often with something more exciting than reality. That's the real superpower of mystery. People crave certainty, but they fall in love with curiosity. Now, contrast that with the person who overshares, who spills their trauma too early, who fills every silence with another story, another confession, another joke. They think they're being relatable. They think honesty is attractive, and it can be, later, but too early, too fast. It floods the interaction. It takes away the dance. It forces understanding before there's even attraction. It's like giving someone the last page of a novel before they've read the first chapter. There's no tension, no suspense, no seduction. That's why the most magnetic people are those who speak with intention. They create pockets of silence, pauses, spaces for tension to breathe. They suggest more than they explain. They imply depth and let you want to find out. This applies to how you tell stories, too. Let's say you're talking about a trip to Italy. Most people will ramble on, where they stayed, what they ate, every detail like a tour guide, but the seductive version. "I almost didn't come back." That's it. That one line opens a loop in the other person's mind. They lean in. Why? What happened? And now they're invested. They want more. You've created curiosity, tension, seduction. In New York, I met a woman named Jada. In a city full of people trying to impress, she was the opposite. She never volunteered much. She asked amazing questions. But when you asked her something, she'd answer briefly and then smile like there was more she wasn't saying. One guy asked, "So you grew up here?" She nodded, sort of. "It's complicated, but the short version is yes, that was it." She didn't dive in. She let the tension build. He couldn't stop himself. He had to know. And when she finally told the story, it was layered, complex, beautiful. And by then, he had earned it. That's the difference. Mystery makes people earn your truth, and when they earn it, they value it more. There's also a physical version of mystery. The way you look at someone, the pauses you let stretch, the way you hold their gaze, then break it, then smile like you're somewhere else for a second. It's not about being aloof. It's about being untouchable until you're not. A glance can suggest intimacy. A half smile can hold more tension than an entire compliment. A pause before a kiss, one that makes them wonder if it's going to happen, can create more electricity than the kiss itself. Mystery is presence without exposure. It's not giving everything away. It's offering a glimpse and then closing the door halfway. Seduction thrives on tension, but tension only exists when something is unknown. That's why the more predictable you are, the less magnetic you become. Predictability is comforting, but it's not exciting. So when you meet someone, don't dump your life story. Don't tell them everything they want to know just because they ask. Give them enough to feel something, but not enough to fully understand you. Let them chase the question, not the answer, and remember this: silence is seductive, so is withholding. So is the ability to leave someone wondering, not because you're playing games, but because you understand that attraction isn't about closing the loop. It's about leaving just enough space for someone to fall into it. In an age of oversharing, the person who knows how to hold back becomes rare, precious, addictive, and that's what makes mystery so powerful. You're not hiding, you're not lying. You're just letting desire do its job. Because when you stop trying to impress and start letting people discover you instead, you become the most fascinating story they can't stop reading, even if you never say the ending. You've been in this moment before, even if you didn't notice it. You're talking to someone, it's going well. They laugh, you laugh. You cross your leg, and seconds later, they do the same. You lean back, and so do they. You sip your drink, and almost like choreography, their hand lifts toward their glass too. You didn't plan it. They didn't either, but something deeper than language is happening. That's mirroring, and it's one of the most powerful and most underrated tools of seduction. When done right, it builds connection without a single word. Not in the way that forces attraction, but in the way that makes someone feel strangely at ease around you. Comfortable, like they've known you longer than they actually have, like you get them, because, on a subconscious level, you do. Mirroring is ancient. It lives in our primal brain, a behavior rooted in something called mirror neurons. These are the cells in your brain that activate when you perform an action, and also when you observe someone else doing it. It's how we empathize, how we learn, how we bond. It's also how we flirt, build rapport, and draw people closer without ever saying, "I like you." Think about babies. They don't speak. They don't rationalize, but they mimic facial expressions, head movements, tones. That's their way of forming early bonds, and we carry this wiring into adulthood, through gestures, body angles, breathing rhythms, vocal tones. In seduction, mirroring is not manipulation, it's alignment. It's a silent dance that builds trust before trust is even conscious. But here's the catch: it has to be subtle, too obvious, and it becomes creepy, too mechanical, and it feels fake. Mirroring works best when it's instinctive, or at least feels that way. The key is observation, deep observation. Not just seeing someone, but reading them. Watch how they sit. Do they lean in when they're interested? Do they gesture with their hands when they speak, or keep their arms close? Are they slow and calm, or fast and expressive? Then, gradually, slowly, you begin to echo. If they shift their weight, you do the same a few seconds later. If they smile, you match their energy, not perfectly, not like a mirror image, more like a harmony. You're creating congruence, not imitation. This alignment begins to trick the brain in the best way. It signals familiarity, safety. The subconscious goes, "I don't know why, but I feel like I trust this person." And that's where the power lies. Let me tell you a story from Berlin. There was a man I met in a workshop, a quiet, awkward type. He wasn't classically attractive, no flash, no big gestures. But when he spoke to women, something fascinating happened. They relaxed, opened up, laughed easily. I watched him closely. He didn't speak much, but what he did do, almost perfectly, was mirror. If someone sat cross-legged, he eventually matched it. If they tucked hair behind an ear, he'd scratch near his. If they leaned forward during an exciting part of the story, so did he, but subtly, and always on a slight delay. It didn't feel like copying. It felt like chemistry. Later that night, one of the women he was talking to told me, "There's something about him. I just feel like he's on my wavelength." That's what mirroring does. It creates a shared rhythm. Like your bodies are speaking a language your minds haven't caught up to yet. But it's not just about body language. Mirroring can go deeper into speech patterns, energy levels, even breathing. If someone speaks softly, you lower your voice. If they're excitable and fast, you match their tempo for a while before slowing things down. This pacing and leading technique, used in hypnosis and high-level persuasion, creates deep rapport fast. It's used by therapists, negotiators, FBI agents, and seducers. In Miami, I watched a woman use it flawlessly. She was magnetic, sure, confident, stylish, but the real reason people were drawn to her was because she matched their state. When talking to an extrovert, she was loud, expressive, animated. With someone shy, she lowered her voice, softened her posture, paused longer between words. She didn't adapt in a fake way. She became a mirror not to manipulate, but to reflect their world back to them. And guess what happened? Everyone felt seen, understood, special. Because most people go through life not being seen. They're used to mismatches, people interrupting, dominating, trying too hard. But when someone matches your vibe, your energy, your presence, you relax. You open up, you connect. Now here's a deeper layer. Once you've established mirroring, once rapport is built, you can reverse the dance. You can start leading. It's subtle, but crucial. Let's say you've been mirroring someone's crossed arms, tilted head, and slow speaking pace. Once they're subconsciously connected, you shift, lean forward slightly, uncross your arms, smile. And then they follow. When they mirror you back, that's when you know you've built trust. Now they're in sync with your rhythm. That's the moment you can escalate in tone, in proximity, even in touch, because rapport creates permission. But don't mistake this for a trick. This only works if the intention is clean. You're not doing it to manipulate, you're doing it to connect. To align, to earn their nervous system's trust before earning their attention. And sometimes mirroring isn't physical at all. It's emotional. You sense their mood and match it before shifting it. If someone's sad, you don't blast them with positivity. You meet them there, you say, yeah, it's been a heavy week, huh? And once they feel safe in that emotion, then you bring lightness. Laughter, a new vibe. This is the subtle seduction of mirroring. It's not a game. It's a dance. It's respect. Empathy, awareness. It's the art of saying, without saying, I see you, I feel you, I'm here with you. And that is rare. Most people are too busy pushing their own energy into a space. The seductive ones, the truly magnetic, they match the room first. They listen with their body, their breath, their posture. Then, and only then, they change the rhythm. And that's what makes people lean in, not because of what you said, but because of how deeply you aligned before you spoke at all. Words lie all the time. They flatter, they cover, they manipulate. People say what they think you want to hear, or what helps them maintain control. But the body rarely lies. The way someone breathes, holds eye contact, shifts in their chair, touches their face when nervous, these are windows to the subconscious. And most people don't even realize they're screaming. This is where nonverbal communication becomes not just informative, but revealing. The difference between someone who's genuinely confident and someone trying to perform confidence isn't in what they say. It's in the hundreds of tiny signals their body leaks unconsciously. And here's the real kicker. Most people aren't trained to read those signals, but they feel them. You've felt it before when someone said, I'm fine, but everything in their body said otherwise. The forced smile, the clenched jaw, the flat tone, the glance down and away, like even they couldn't believe what they were saying. Your gut didn't believe them, even if your brain couldn't explain why. That's because the body communicates on a primal level. Before words, before culture, we survived by reading posture, tone, pace, and movement. We had to know, is this person safe? Is this tribe member trustworthy? Is this stranger friend or threat? And those instincts are still alive in us today. Especially in seduction. In fact, attraction, real attraction, often comes from congruence. Congruence means your body, tone, and intent are all aligned. There's no mismatch. You're not trying to look confident while secretly freaking out inside. You're not delivering a compliment with the body language of insecurity. You're not saying it's nice to meet you, while stepping back like you're trying to escape. People may not consciously spot those inconsistencies, but their subconscious does. And the result, discomfort, distrust, a feeling that something's off, even if they can't explain why. Let me give you a story. A guy named Darren once joined a private group I worked with. On paper, he was everything: tall, successful, well-dressed, had great stories. But something wasn't landing. He'd approach women, crack jokes, smile wide, but the connections fell flat. We watched him carefully, and here's what we saw. While his words were smooth, his body was tight. His shoulders were slightly hunched. His eyes darted quickly after making a joke, like he was scanning for approval. He laughed too quickly after others did, always slightly behind, trying to match the vibe rather than lead it. He was performing. When we called it out, he admitted the truth. He was terrified. Every approach was a high-stakes game for him. Rejection hit hard, so he built a polished persona, but the mask had cracks, and people could feel it. Compare that to a woman I met in Lisbon. Her name was Tasha. She wasn't loud, she wasn't on, but her presence was undeniable. Every move she made had intention. She looked you in the eye and held it, not with intensity, but with a quiet comfort. She didn't over-smile. She didn't rush to fill silences. And when she touched your arm, it was slow, natural, completely unforced. Her nonverbal communication didn't just match her words, it led them. People gravitated toward her. Because she didn't just talk, she radiated alignment. This is the honest truth of nonverbal seduction. People trust what feels authentic. And authenticity is hard to fake. You can memorize pickup lines, you can rehearse confident words. But if your body is locked in tension, if your breath is shallow, if your hands fidget like you're hiding something, you're sending louder messages than your mouth. And they often betray you. In fact, a study by Dr. Albert Mehrabian, often misquoted but still insightful, found that when it comes to feelings and attitudes, only 7% of communication is verbal. The rest, 38%, is tone, 55% is body language. Now, this doesn't mean words don't matter, but it does mean that your body and voice must match your message. Otherwise, people feel the dissonance and they pull away, and it goes both ways. One of the most powerful things you can do is learn to read nonverbal truth in others. When someone smiles, but their eyes don't crinkle at the corners, it's fake. When someone compliments you, but keeps their arms crossed and feet pointed toward the door, they want to leave. When someone agrees with you verbally, but tilts their head slightly and raises one eyebrow, they're probably unsure or even resisting. The better you get at reading this, the more power you have in connection. Because now you're not just hearing what they say, you're sensing what they feel. And that's where real seduction lives, in the emotional undercurrent. That's also why people who are fully present, who are grounded in themselves, are so attractive. They're not leaking conflict signals. Their mind and body are aligned, they're calm. They breathe from their diaphragm, not their chest. Their gestures are open, expansive, unrushed, and it doesn't mean they're perfect. It means they're authentic. Because truth is magnetic. You can feel it in someone who owns their flaws, their thoughts, their desires without shame, without pretense. That's what makes someone walk into a room and shift the energy. Not flash, not noise, presence, and you can train it. You can become the person whose stillness communicates more than someone else's volume, whose touch lands with real weight because it comes from a place of calm confidence, not neediness. Whose gaze says, I see you and I'm not hiding, but you have to stop lying with your body first. You have to stop saying I'm good, while flinching every time silence stretches. You have to stop pretending to be confident while your legs twitch and your voice breaks. You have to confront your own incongruence and realign. Because once you do, people will feel it. They'll relax in your presence. They'll trust what you say because it feels real. They'll crave more time around you, not because of your looks or lines, but because your energy tells a deeper story. A story their body understands. Because when it comes to seduction, the words are just the trailer. But the body is the full film. If this made you see attraction in a whole new way, don't just disappear into the shadows. Hit like, and if you want to keep unlocking the hidden codes of connection, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning.